So I will start with the basic example of a Microsoft list that we created in a previous video, which was a travel request Microsoft list, as you can see on the screen. In that list, I have a few different columns concerning the requests made by different users within the organization. So you can see there is the ID request, which is a sequential number created automatically by the list. Who has created the request? Who is the requester? Where is the person traveling from? And this is, as you recall, a choice within the list. So the data is there on your screen. Now, how do we connect to Power BI that information to create some visual that you can further share with colleagues or employees within your organization? Keep in mind one thing, is when you use a Microsoft list, you could eventually directly share access to the list. But the risk by doing so is that by mistake, somebody could modify your list, change the columns order, delete some records. So to avoid that, it's always better to basically secure the data by creating a Power BI dashboard so that people will only have a view access to the required information that is saved and recorded in your list. So as a starting point, we're going to open Power BI. So Power BI is a desktop application, and it's best to use the desktop application because it's obviously providing more information, more visuals, more features. So here we can create a blank report. So first thing first, it's very important that you connect to your organization's tenant with your credentials. You can see here on the top, I am already connected to my account. If it's not the case, you will have to sign in by clicking here on the top right corner, and then you will enter your organization username and password so that you are further connected to your organization tenant. Now, also, very important point, you may have a limitation set by your IT administrator within your organization where you would not be authorized to create Power BI dashboards, not to create because you can still create through the Power BI desktop application, but you would not be able to publish them because they may have disabled access to your personal workspace within Power BI. So if you're not sure, I suggest you first contact your IT administrator, ask whether your personal workspace is activated within your Office 365 account. And if yes, then you can proceed as we're going to demonstrate today during this video. So once you are in a blank report screen, the first thing you need to do is to know the address where your list is located. So what you need to do is to here go up to the end of your name or the address of your organization, as I show on my screen. You copy that bar address before the list. You go back into Power BI, and then you start by typing get data. So here by default, you will see there is a lot of options, but we don't have the one we need. So I'm going to click directly on the icon to be able to further search for SharePoint, or you can even type list, and it will return two options. One is the online list, one is the list. I strongly suggest to use SharePoint list and not the online one, because this will have more options for you later when you want to set some refresh to make sure that your dashboard gets automatically refreshed with the new data that you get once you have created your dashboard. So I will do connect. And now the application is asking you what is the site URL. So remember, we copied the address from the Microsoft list. All I need is to paste it and press OK. And in the next screen, you will see every kind of resources that are existing within this address. One of them being our table travel requests, which is our list. All I need to do is to click here and to load the data. By default, the data will be loaded with all the information from your list, including hidden columns and other information that have been generated by Microsoft List when you have created your list initially. So now you are here, and you will see now that on the right side, on the data pane, I do have the travel request table, and if I develop the content, you will see all the fields that are made available to you. So there is quite substantial list of fields here, and we will obviously not need all of them. The ones that we will be interested with is the ID, which is, you know, the travel request identification number. We will also need who is the requester. So by default, you will see that the requester here is called requester ID. Unfortunately, as you remember, when we created the list comes from the column that is a person column, which connects to your Outlook database of users within your organization. So by default, the system recognizes the column requester ID as a number and not as a name. So I'll give you an example. I will start to put the grid of what I want to visualize from my list. So here within all the different visualization that you have available, I will select here the table. Now that the table is selected, I need to say what fields or what columns I want to see in that table. So you can resize as you wish. Now here you will see on the right side, on that visualization that is clicked and selected, because I just added it, I can add the columns I want. So as I said, I want to start with the request ID. So if you see, I put now request ID, you will see now the ID column with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I go back to my list, you will notice that it corresponds to the existing records within my list. So far, so good. Next, if you want now to add the requester, so by default, the only field available here is requester ID. If I add this one, you will see what's going to happen. I drag it here in the columns, and as you can see, it's giving a number. And the number corresponds to the internal ID linked to me as a user, because in my list, Patrick here is the requester, and within Outlook, in the Entra ID records, I am the number 3 within the organization. So this is not what we want, and we need to correct that. So we need to correct that directly within Power BI. And how do we do that? We need to go on, sorry, clicked in the middle. You need to go on transform data, which is basically asking Power BI to load again the table as it was imported from the Microsoft list. And if you go at the end, you will see that you have options to either keep as it is now the requester. If I leave that as a record, is the requester ID. The approver, if I leave it as a record, is also the approver ID. And we need to change that to pull what is the full name or the title of the person behind that record. So for the requester, I will click here in the arrows, and this is now pulling any other Outlook settings from the profile, the user profile that are existing. So you can see that there's a lot of information, including the email, if I want to visualize the email instead of the name, the mobile phone. That would be interesting if the contact in Outlook also has the mobile phone details of the employee, and so on and so on. The one that we're interested now for us about is the name only, or the full name. And this will be unselect every column and only keep the column title, which is the correct field where the full name of the employee will come up. So if I click OK, you will see now, boom, the record has changed to the translated title of the Outlook contact within your organization. I need to do the same with the approver. So I pull here, it will select, it will show me all the available fields. I unselect everything and I only keep title. I click OK. Now that I have what I need, and I don't believe I need to transform any other data so far, I just need to close and apply. And once the Power Query has completed the transformation, I need to go back to my field. I need to remove the request ID. And now you will see that on top of the request ID, I have now on the right in the data pane, the request title, the requester title, sorry. So all I need to do is pull, drag and drop here. And now you see, I can put, and I see that I'm the requester for each of the requests that were made through the travel request list. Now, what else do I need? after the requester, and you can put that in any order that you like. I want to put who was the approver of my request. So I will pull here the approver title. After that, I want to put the other information that are important is where is the requester traveling from. So I will pull the traveling from. I will also take here the departure date because I'm traveling from at a specific date and time, if you remember in my list. So if I go back in my list, you will see that I have date of departure, including the time, the traveling to, return date, and accommodation. So I want to keep the same order to keep a certain logic. So after the date of departure, I will put the traveling to. Here it is. And after that, the return date, which is the return date here, the date I said I would return from my trip. And the last field is the accommodation requested if I had made a requirement to have accommodation. So now we have pulled the data. You can see it's visualized here on the grid. So of course you can play around and decide to change the layout of your grid. I'm not going to go into details, but here from the build visual, you go directly to the format of your visual. So we want to format the grid. And here you have different presets that you may want to use. Me, by default, I like to use for instance, contrast alternative row, if that's what you like, or if you don't, then you can change with anything else, minimal, bold header, like this one is a good one, for instance, and you can even change then the column header. You can here and go and change the color if you don't like the black, and you can take any other color that you may like, as you wish. Now, what you can also customize, you see, for instance, here, the ID, it's only ID, and I want to rename it to call it request ID, for instance. So all I do is I go here on the column here, and I click on the arrow to change and rename for this visual. And instead of ID, I will call it request ID. Enter, and now you can see, boom, it has changed here. So you can do the same. Requester title, we don't want the title, we just want to say, for instance, requester only, enter, and then we can do the same for approver, rename, and so on and so on. So this is something very simple, and you can again navigate here to customize as much as you want this visual. Now, I want to point on a very small bug, I would say, and this is very common in this kind of environment. You will see that in my list, the date and time are here, for instance, my first request or ID number 2, it's 9 a.m. in the morning, and a return date at 9 a.m. as well in the morning. While if I look at the record pulled into Power BI, the ID number 2, it says 4 p.m. here and 4 p.m. here. So this is very common when it happens, and this is usually because the tenant of your organization, so wherever your HQ or the creation of your organization domain and Office 365 account has been done, may be sitting in another country, in another time zone. Very often, you cannot change these regional settings because they are set by your IT administrator. And if they change it for you, that means it would affect any other country where you operate, where they would see something different, which is not corresponding to your time zone. So the only way to override that is to modify in Power Query and to add a new column to translate that column's date and time to the correct time where it should be. So I expect that my tenant here is on the US time zone, which is 7 hours before me. So in this case, I need to build a column that translates that time into 7 hours before me to match the 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. should correspond to 7 hours. So here what I do, I will go into transform data on the main menu, home menu, transform data. Once I'm transforming the data, I'm again back on the row table. I need to go into add column, and I will create a custom column. And for the sake of this presentation, as obviously these are the things that you may not know, even myself. You can use any of the AI tools, ChatGPT and so on, and ask basically what would be, the way to readjust the time zone of one of your column into Microsoft or into Power BI, and it will tell you what's the best way to do so. And usually they will say add a column and put a specific formula. So here I'm going to show you the formula that I've created, which is a simple one. Let me just open it on another screen. So this is the formula. So here I copy that formula, boom, and then I go back to my screen and I will show you exactly how to do it. So here the new column name will be departure, and I can call it local because it's local time, obviously. So we can call it departure, local, for instance. And the formula will be the one I copied. So the only thing to change is that the column here is not your column. It should be the exact column that I want to change. So I will delete that and I will select here the departure, date of departure column, and I say insert, and that's it. So when I do that, boom, I just need to save, and you can see now that this new column created has the right time, 9, 10, 8, 9, 9. So if I go on my list, 9, 10, 8, 9, and 10. So this should normally be corresponding to what we need to continue. So once we've done that, I need to check because I can see that it has not changed the last record. Number 5 should have been 10. Maybe it's a small bug, but let's continue to make sure once we apply the changes. I need to do the same with the return date. So I also go into add column, custom column. Again, now here is going to be return date. So I change it to return date. I paste again the formula and I change now the column with the correct one from my current list, which will be the return date. So where it is, return date, here it is. I insert and finish. And then boom, it should do the same return date, 4 p.m. So no, this is actually incorrect. Date of departure. Sorry, yes, I need to go at the end. My mistake. I was looking at here it is. So he renamed it return date 1 because obviously this is a duplicated column. So once I'm finished, I go back to home. I say close and apply. I leave Power BI to complete. Is applying the changes. Now that the changes are applied, all I need to do is change the initial return date I put in my column. So I will pull the return date 1 and delete the return date to only have the right one. And I will do the same for the date of departure with the new departure local that I want to put here in my visual, and I remove date of departure. So once I've done that, again, I want to change and update the name of that column. And here I will say departure date without putting the time because we can see it's there. And for the return date, I just need to rename and remove the one which is not cosmetically nice. Here it is. So now I have my records. Same here, I have is accommodation rec. So it's not the full text because there's a limitation. I will rename it and I will say requested accommodation. And now I have something that is quite interesting to share with colleagues once the dashboard is completed. So now let's put a bit of cosmetic there. I want to add some text, at least a title. So here it's what? It's a travel request tracker or dashboard as you want. You select the text, you basically center it, make it bigger. So again, this is very personal and you do it exactly as you want. You can resize that and then you need to place this one to be at the top center. So Power BI shows you where is the center by, you see the dotted red vertical line shows you that here you are exactly in the middle of your screen or the page. Or the Canva, and this would be the same for this grid if I want to put it exactly at the middle beam. Now, what else can we put? You may want to have a card that shows the total number of requests to date, because now it's easy, there's only 6, but once you have hundreds of them being submitted throughout time, you want to have an overview very quickly of how many requests to date I have received, and so on and so on. So you have here a visual called card, which you can click. So by default is empty. Now we need to tell him what data will I put as a value. And here the best way to count is to count the number of request ID. This is a unique ID, so you can pull the ID here and put it as a value. By default, it says first, all you need to do is count distinct. Once you do that, boom, it's telling me there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is correct. So again, here you want to change your layout, and make the value as you want. So the callout value, the general, as I said, you can change anything you want, the date format, the visual. You want also to potentially rename and not count of ID, but rename it and say number of requests. So you can basically type that directly here, number of requests, enter. So now it's called number of requests plural, which would be better. Okay, now you may want to also center the layout and vertical alignment, it's done. So if you're not sure, you can also search, which is a very good thing. There is a very good option here. You see the alignment here is vertical, horizontal. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can change. And again, I invite you to play around. If you're not sure, you can search here, for instance, center. Or let me check, because yes, sometimes the English and the American is not correct. But you can, just change everything you want, and apply it as you want. And once you're happy with it, so you can basically here, number of requests, I put it like that. It's a small visual. I put it on the whatever. Now you may want also to put some bars to show how many travels done by different requesters. So obviously in my case, there's only one, and it's me, and all the requests are made by me. But if you had multiple requesters, so you could take, for instance, one of the stacked column bar. And again, here you would, in the x-axis, you would put the requester. So you can put requester title. In that case, there's only me. And in the y-axis, it's the number of requests by that person. So again, you can rely on the ID, which is a unique ID, and you put it here, and you will put again count distinct. And now it's showing me, obviously, that I have made 5 requests, which is the case. But if there was more users within your organization, you can expand, and you would see that, as a proper graph that you can place anywhere you want. So again, here, I want to rename this and, and change it. And here it will be number of. So you can actually change it here, or directly go here and go into the general title and rename the full title of this visual. So here I will say number of requests per travelers, or whatever, something like that. Boom, and my visual has, and the count of ID, which is the y value. You can just rename, and you can just set number NB. That's it. So here you have one visual. Now again, you can also add some other visuals. For instance, pie, where you would say, okay, how many people are traveling from each location, for instance. So you would also put your visual somewhere here next to this one, adjust it the way you want. And again, here you would put, so the value would be, the legend would be for instance, traveling from. So here we'll put traveling from, which are the different options, as you see, London, Paris, Rome, and how many times our people are traveling from each location. You will also take the ID number on values and make here, again, count distinct. And now it's telling me that there is 2 requests from Rome, 1 request from London, and 2 requests from Paris. So if you look at the list, there is Paris here, Paris 3, 2 from Rome, and 1 from London, and so on and so on. And you can adjust. So the visuals, even this part, you can change it and put it underneath if you prefer. The legend here, now it's center right, and you can put bottom center. and it's underneath. It really depends of the length of the text and how you want that to, to be visualized. As I showed you before, the count of ID by traveling from is not really nice. So you can also go here on the title and change here and say, number of trips per location or per departure location, which is the case here. Voila. So here you see it's really up to you. I'm not going to go into the cosmetic of the overall dashboard, but this is how you could do it. What is important is when you start having a lot of filters, because you can also put, for instance, which is very common to put a slicer. And here on the slicer, you may also want, for instance, to be able to select and change all the visuals based on the requester. So here on the slicer, I will again select the requester ID, the requester title, sorry, put it here. Now by default, there's only one. So this type of slicer is my preference. It's not to display it as it is now, it's to change it to actually go on the slicer setting and put a drop down. And once you have a drop down, it makes it much nicer because you can basically put that anywhere here, for instance, and you can even make it searchable. So for this, you will click on the three dots and add the search option here. So now not only I will see all the name, but if there is hundreds of them, I can just start typing my first name and it will return automatically the person. And by clicking, all the other visuals will automatically change. So if there was multiple travelers in that visual, it will only show every travels done by myself. The same for here, it will show all the location I left or traveled from, and so on and so on. So this would change automatically as soon as you select one of the visual, and you can reset the search function here. Now, the last point, which sometimes very nice to have, is once you have a lot of filters and, I can click here and then I can further click here and, and you may be lost of how to reset the whole dashboard by default. So what you do, you come back to the default state of your dashboard. And what you do, you will go here and insert a shape, which could be, an arrow, or you can even add a button. And here you actually have an existing reset button. So you can click that. This is reset. Now, what you need to do is when you click on that, you want the whole dashboard to come back to its default state. So before we can do that, we need to be here in the default state. And here in the modeling, in the view, you need to create a bookmark. So I will go here on bookmarks. I will say add one. So it's a bookmark to the current state of my dashboard. I click add. It's already added. I will rename it to say reset. And once I've created that bookmark, I go on my button and I will go here into the setting of the button called action, which I will activate. And I say, yes, when I click, I want the action to happen. What kind of action will it be? It should be a bookmark. And what is the bookmark? The one I just created, which is called reset. So once you have done that, I will show you now. Let's say I click on this traveling from London. Now, by clicking on reset, so once you are in Power BI, you need to do control and click. But once you have published your dashboard and people can visualize it, they just need to click on the icon only. So here we'll do control click and boom, you see everything got reset by default. If people are not sure what this icon is for, you can obviously add another text box, call it reset, so they will know what is the icon for. So you call it reset, that's it. You of course resize everything, so you just visualize what you need to visualize. And once you have done that properly, boom, you can just now move it and move it and put it here so people will know this is a reset function. And that's it. So let's consider this is complete. There's nothing more I want to put. Now, the next step is basically save. So you save your dashboard. You need to say where do you want to save it. Call it as it should be called. In this case, it's travel request dashboard. It's always the .pbyx format for Power BI. And once you finish saving, you can publish. And as I said, if you're logged in with your credential and if your administrator has authorized you to have a personal workspace, you will see your workspace by default coming. You click on it to select, and then you leave Power BI to finish. And once it's finished, I'm going to show you now how to get to visualize and share further this dashboard with everyone within your organization. So here it has finished, success. I can close Power BI. I will save it because he's asking me to do so. Now I open my organization's SharePoint or wherever I am. So now I'm on the list. I can go here. I go on more apps and I need to select Power BI into the list. So it will open your Power BI environment. And you can see here I have my workspace. And if I click into it, now I can see my report plus the data source that is attached to my report. And you can see that this has been published at 4:25, considering that my computer 4:26, so that's the correct version. So here, before we do anything, we need to set the refresh frequency for your dashboard to make sure that whenever the list is getting updated, and this can happen a few times a day, maybe only one time a week, whatever. So based on the frequency of requests that may be done into your travel request tool, you will have to set the refresh more regularly to make sure that everyone opening the Power BI dashboard would see what is being refreshed in real time, or at least after the refresh. So here now we can go into settings, and you will see now that, yes, so by default, he asks you to reconfirm your credentials to connect to the data source. So here I need to say that it's an O2 credential from an organization. I sign in. So it will normally just ask me to connect to my account. And once you confirm, now it should be working well, and confirm that is automatic. That's it. So all you need to do now is to go on the refresh part here. And you can see that by default, there's no refresh. So what you do here, you select your time zone, which is best to make sure that the time you will indicate is refreshed. You activate the refresh. By default, it says daily, but if you want that to be refreshed more than one time per day, you can say add another time, and you can say, okay, my day starts at 8 in the morning. Maybe people will start making requests. So let's refresh at least once at 10 a.m. and maybe another one at 1 p.m. after lunch, just in case. So you select 1 p.m. and maybe just before the end of the day, when you finish, if you finish at 5, you can say at 4 p.m. another one, and we're good. And what's going to happen? You just apply. And now Power BI cloud system will automatically refresh the content of your dashboard at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. So whenever you open the dashboard, whoever opens it, they will see the most recent content. So now I can go back to my workspace, and I also want to show you now the dashboard, how to share it. So if I click on it, it will open it within Power BI application, online application, which is not the best way to visualize something, especially when you have a lot of visualization within your dashboard, because it could be messy, and you can see you're just losing screen space by having all these different options. So what I do by default, usually I will go here on File, Embed Report, Website of Portal, and I will copy and paste this address. So if I now paste it on my browser, and you will see that it will now use the full screen of my browser to visualize that dashboard. And this is what people will see. So if there was any filter that you are allowed or activated in your dashboard, people would see it. So for instance, now I didn't, but if I go back to my Power BI dashboard, and I will open it, the travel request that I did. So I open it, you will load everything again. Now, there's no filter, because if I click here, you see there is a filter here. So normally this one should be seen. I'm not sure why it's not, because by default it's not hidden and it's not locked. So I should be able to see it. But if you had specifically had filters here that are not hidden and locked, they should be visible by any users once you share here dashboard with them. So that's one way of sharing. The other one is obviously if you want to put it into a web page. So normally with your account, you should have a SharePoint page or SharePoint site. You can basically create a landing page, to talk about your departments, or this tool being from the administration department. If they have a SharePoint page dedicated to the administration information, then you can embed that dashboard into the page in one of the visuals, so people could have access to it directly without remembering when was the email that I received with the link that was shared by that person to me, and so on and so on. So yes, basically this is how it works. This is the basic again, and you can explore more. That's it. So if you're happy with that video, click like and subscribe. There will be more coming. And feel free to comment or to send me a message if you want me to provide you additional guidance when we try to build some of these tools. Thank you very much.